All right, so tonight we're just going to cover the select statement. Believe it or not, this is probably the most popular statements in all relational database systems, right? Making queries, and that's mostly the most database users do. They make queries, and in relational database systems, there are two major categories of languages, if you will. We call it the DML and DDL. Okay, DML stands for Data Manipulation Language, okay, which is the DML here. So this is one of them. The other group is the DDL, stands for Data Definition Language. And the keywords are the word manipulation and definition. Okay, so for the DML, all you are doing is basically manipulating data. Okay, you're just touching the data itself. You can retrieve the data, so you can use them. You can modify the data, add new data to the table, and so forth. You're not changing the structure, or we call the definition of a table at all, right? So we're just operating on the data itself. That's what's called DML, for manipulating data. And next time, or actually in a couple of weeks, we'll be learning the DDL, and that's when we're creating databases, creating tables, and altering tables, adding constraints to tables, things like that. So those will be where we're altering the definition of a table structure. Okay, so the DML has like maybe 3 or 4 languages or keywords that were used, and one of them is the select statement. Okay, the others are like the update, delete, and insert. Okay, so those 3 other ones are also part of the DML language. And these are like what's used in this word or this acronym called CRUD. I'm not sure if you heard of it, CRUD, for create, read, update, and delete. Okay, so the select is the letter R in read of the CRUD operation. Okay, so that's what this is about. So here, my notes are here. I have some examples to go along with it as well. You know, using the VentureWorks 2014, which is again the only one that I can run on this machine. It's an old machine, so I can't even run 2016 here. But I think most of the content will still be the same. Okay, before we dive in a little deeper, I just want to mention something about these 2 standards here, the NC SQL and the TSQL. Okay, so the NC SQL, which is the standard structure language for all relational systems. That means any relational database systems will understand it, like Access, Oracle, MySQL, you name it, even in SQL. And then besides that, each vendor also had their own unique SQL statements as well. And Microsoft has what's called a TSQL, or the Transact SQL. This is only specific for Microsoft products like SQL Server. Okay, so when you create your statements or your code in the real world, I guess you have to kind of think, will my database be used by other systems? If they are, then you want to prevent from using too many TSQL commands, because they will not be understood by those other systems. So you will probably want to write your code to be more standardized in the universal, using the universal language, which is the NC SQL. And sometimes it's a little bit, you have to do a little bit more work to perform certain things, but at least the good thing is that it works across the board. Okay. And if you know for sure that your clients or your database can be only used on Microsoft products, then yeah, TSQL is the way to go. It's shorter, it's much more efficient, it's faster in certain ways, and that's why they're there. So if you go to Oracle, they have their own something. MySQL has its own, and so on. So this example here, I gave you, I'll show you here, just 3 things, or one thing basically that is different across the 3 systems here. So the rest, all the code here in black are universal, but the one in color here, you can see this is an identity. It's a keyword used only for Microsoft, right? That is a special key we'll learn next time to make this field, called ID field, to increase the number by 1 every time. So it's an auto increment. As you can see down here, it's called the auto increment for MySQL. And so that means when you set a field, usually only a number field, it's integer type, to an identity or an auto increment for MySQL, and Oracle uses a sequence instead, so it's different. What that means is that this field is managed by the system, so you don't have to provide the data. It will automatically be generated by the system. It manages it for you. And the idea is to make that field unique across the table. So later on when you create tables, you will probably be using that quite a lot to generate ID. If you don't want to do that, then you have to manually insert the data into it, and you also want to make sure that the data does, they do not duplicate. Okay. So, so in this case, this statements here will not work on MySQL and will not work in Oracle. Only works in Microsoft because of this keyword identity. Okay. Because it uses a different one down here, and then MySQL does not understand identity, and SQL Server does not understand auto increment, and so on. And then down here, this is Oracle. The Oracle actually it doesn't have it. It uses what's called the conventional way, which is the ANSI standard. What you would do is you create a sequence instead. So you create a sequence, and then you add a sequence into the insertion statements here. Okay, so you add a sequence here. So basically, it's like you're calling another almost like a function or a construct to insert the sequence inside here every time. So this is the standard way to do it. As you can see, it takes a lot of effort, right? A lot of work. Whereas if I do it this way, just put a keyword, I'm done. Okay. So that's what it means by having two different versions of statements. I mean, it doesn't mean that TSQL is going to have its own select statement. It doesn't. It just has some additional functions that you can use, like the averages, the conversion of data. You're going to cast one type to another type, and so on. So these are built-in functions inside SQL Server that you can use right away to process data much faster and quicker. And again, these functions are not portable to other systems. And there are, I guess, intermediary products that you can use to convert them between systems, but it's still not 100% safe. So that is the difference between the two. And so in this class, we'll be using both of these. Okay, sometimes we'll be using the TSQL as well, and it's kind of hard to tell which is which. Okay, it's just just a matter of like lots of practice, and I mean, if you don't experience with other systems, you wouldn't know. But until you do so, you'll see, hey, how come this auto increment doesn't work in here, or this doesn't work in here? Then you find, okay, so that's Microsoft stuff, and so on. Okay, so let's look at the select statement. The select statement clause. Let's see. I want to look at the actual. So down here, this is not the complete statement. I'm going to look at something. I have a syntax here. So let me go there. Let's see the syntax. This one, let me go to that. Okay, so here it is. Wishing closed up. So this is the complete syntax for the select statement. As you can see, it's much more than you think. And so, but we're not going to use all of these here. Okay, it can be really complex, but we're not going to use all of them. And so the select statement starts with the keyword select, and everything you see here that has a square brackets around it are optional. That means you don't have to use it. Okay. So the keyword select is required. Again, all these are optional. The column list is required. In the brackets is required. But like the all distinct, the top, and this expression here. So this is a group is optional. Even the from table is optional. So that means the select statement, it doesn't always use to make queries from tables. You can also use it to print data to the console as well. Okay, that's why this is optional. You may wonder, why is that, right? And because it's so commonly used for data query that we might not understand why it's in here. But this is, again, optional. Okay. So if you look, the way you read this is that select here, the all means it's everything. The distinct means to retrieve only the unique rows. If you have duplicate rows, then you will just retrieve one record instead of like 10 duplicate rows. You make it distinct. The top here means you can select the top followed by the expression here. Expression will be just anything like a number expression or a calculation of some sort. Meaning like the top 10, top 1,000, or top 5 records, right? If you want to select just the top 5, then it will return only 5 out of whatever that many is. And if you want to say the top 10%, it will just grab the 10% of the overall result set. If you have a total of 100 result set return rows, the top 10 will just give you the 10% of that. Okay, so you have those options there just to make a quick read. And then, so for us, usually we're going to select some column or columns from a table source. Okay, a source table here. And then we'll use the where clause, followed by the group, and the having, and the order by. So we'll stop here from the select all the way down to the order by. We're not going to learn these down here. This is like for really like, I guess more of like, I would say, I never used it. I never used those down there. I know they use it for, I can't even think of a reason why they use that. Some options. Yeah, but yeah, I guess we can look into that. But we're not gonna learn that in this class. It's just too much. So just all the way up to down to the order by, where we sort things. And then the column list, this one here is from here, right? This column list here just shows you that what this includes all these here. Just again, more options. The star is a wildcard. That means select every column, every row. Or the slash means the or, the star, or a table name or view or alias. We'll learn those later. Or and so on and so on. Okay. So this slash means or. Just one or the other, not both. So this is the simple statement here. So instead of just going over this note, why don't we go into SQL Server and do some of these examples here? Okay, so let's go into SQL Server. My machine uses 2014 only for AdventureWorks. I think yeah, you should have 2016 for your AdventureWorks, but this should still be about the same. Okay, so I don't remember which instance has AdventureWorks 2014. I'll just try the first one and see what happens. And nope, I do not. So not this one. I'm going to close that one, connect again to a different one. Let's try the 2014 Express. I have a lot. Okay. Okay, that's cool. So I have the 2014 here. All right, so to write our code, just click the new query up here to load this new page or new file called SQL query1.sql. This is a file that you can save because these are actual scripts you could save and run on different machines if you want to. So you can save it. It's good to save it just in case. And so to save it, just Control S. I'm going to save it. I put inside. I put here. I put spring 2020. and I just put unit 2 as SQL, and the data scale will be automatically added. Okay, so you keep saving that inside your code so you can run it later. And now, does yours have the line number? You don't have line number? No. Okay, you need to turn that on. So let's turn that on by going to the settings. I think it's under the tools. Yeah, tools, options, and just do a little configuration here first. So under, I believe, if you want to change the color themes, you can do it under the general for the environment. I think under the text editor, click or expand the text editor, and under the general, hopefully it's there. If it's not there, it's one of these, I know. It would say line number. Yeah, under the all languages. So at text editor, all languages, and then just enable the line numbers. Okay. And also enable the word wrap, so that you don't have to scroll left and right. So that's important. I think that's all I want to do here. And if you want to change font size and so on, the general lets you choose the drag and drop text editing is also really helpful. That means you can drag code around using the mouse only, right? And you know, play with it when you have time, especially the environment here. Change the font size, whatever it is here. There is probably some place in here like for fonts and colors. Or here, font size in here, and so forth. Okay, so you should have the line numbers in here. And for example, if I do something like that, the drag and drop means I can select this and just click and drag it, put it somewhere else, right? That's the drag and drop feature. So I don't have to copy and paste here. Just drag and move it around. Okay, so that's our file. We'll write query. This query we make against a database system, a database file, and the one I'm using right now is AdventureWorks 2014. So make sure that this file, if I'm writing the code to manipulate data from this table or this AdventureWorks 2014 database, you want to make sure you select that in the drop down. Okay, so this drop down here should show all the databases in your system. I have a lot of them here actually, but the one we use is 2014. So if you don't select that here and you try to write your code to try to select something from here, you would think that it's in here, but it's not. It may be coming from a different database up here. So just make sure you are the right database. So once that's selected, all your code here will be pointing to this database. And another way, if you want to really make sure that you are using that all the time, is to use the use command followed by the database name. If you put that on the very top of your script, this is called a script page or script file, then scripts are executed from top to bottom, just like any code. So that means if I use this command here, that means that whatever I select here it doesn't matter. Okay? It's irrelevant, because this line will supersede or will override whatever I select here. Okay, and so this is only useful for if you run your entire script from top to bottom, because this IDE lets you do something like this. So select something like from let's just put here ABC. It doesn't matter. That means I can have a lot of code like this, and if I just do like that, if I run it like in this way, then it's going to execute from top to bottom. And because when we do sample, we do code in here, I don't need to run everything here. I could just pick and choose which statement to run. So to do that, I'm just going to select that with my mouse. If I highlight that, if I click execute, then it will only run line 6. Okay. So if I run line 6, that means, okay, so it better be coming from a table inside here, whatever this is, because it does not execute this line. It does not know which database to use. Okay.
Is the use command like T-SQL? Is it specific to this IDE, or is that?
No, it's universal. Yeah. Okay, so in this IDE, you can pick and choose only the selected statements to run if you want to, and sometimes it's much quicker that way. So that's that. Another is how to make comments. You can also write comments in your code. There are two ways in SQL Server. One is you can use a pair of dashes, okay, two dashes. That will turn that into a comment. This is a single line comment. Only works for one line. If you want to use multi-line, we'll use the same as JavaScript or in Java, the /*, and then you want to end that with a //. Okay, so that's for multi-line comments. So either way will work. And if you want to, so that's for typing it in. There is also a shortcut to do that. I don't remember which command it is. Microsoft's commands are kind of like, it's almost like a pair of characters, unlike other IDEs. But another way is you can choose this icon here. These two icons here just mean comments, uncomment. So if I select this, if I click that or add comments, uncomment that. Okay, so sometimes that helps too. All right, so select statement. Again, select. The reason why, again, we saw in the syntax that the from was optional. It's optional. It's because I can say select 2023. And if I were to execute that, you see that it prints the word 23, the number 23 down here in the result. Okay, so it doesn't have to be coming from a database table. It's like a print statement. That's why the rest is optional. You just select and then something to print, and then you're done. As you can see, by itself, it doesn't work. Right? It needs at least one object in addition to the word select statement. It could be a word or something. So that's why it's optional for the from. But usually, you want to use that to select something from a table. Okay, so the table, for example, in the eventual works 2014, yours is 2016, but these should still be the same. I added some of these in here, so don't worry about these here. Yours should have like mostly the human resources, person, and production, and so on. So if you want to pick something from the person.address, so I could say select followed by one or more spaces. It doesn't matter, it's at least one space. If you want to select everything, including every column in there, then you use the wildcard, which is the star. Okay, the star will replace all the columns. And if you use a star, you cannot use additional columns. Okay, it already means everything. So if you add additional columns, it's like it's redundant. So everything that a star means from, and then from the database table. Okay, which one is it? The one that I'm going to get from is the person.address. So you have to type the word person along with the address. And the IntelliSense tells you, if I type in the person dot, it tells you all the tables that are associated with the person object here. This person here is called a schema. Schema is just a category. Think about it, it's a category, a group, or if you think in terms of a company, it's like a department, right? So all these tables here belong to this person group. All these tables down here belong to the production group, and so on. The reason why you use schema is so that you can use the same table name in the same database. Because I could have the same address here for human resources. So human resources.address, person.address, production.address. If you don't have the schema, then you are limited to just one table called address, right? And so you kind of use that to compartmentalize or to, I guess, differentiate the address table belonging to a particular group. Okay, so if this table address belongs to the person, then you have to use the schema here. If you just say it like that, it does not know what address is. Because if you don't do it, then by default, okay, SQL Server would think it belongs to the DBO.address. Okay, that's the default. The default means you don't have to put DBO. DBO is the database object. So when you create a database later on, you'll see that it will automatically prepends the DBO to a table. Okay, and of course you can always change it. Like these names here, the person that's something, I can change this schema to whatever I want. So when you design databases, you can say, hey, these are belonging to the Eastern, East Coast, West Coast, North and Southern, and then their own tables. Okay. So if any of these schemas or these names here are different other than the DBO, you must include them in the table here. If you don't, again, it won't work. Okay. So you have to use that person there. And the schema actually go a little bit more than this. So we have the schema plus the table name, and then these belong to a database called AdventureWorks. So in front of this, you can say AdventureWorks dot person dot address. Right? It's pretty long. So if you do this way, then okay, so then this one you don't have to select that anymore. It doesn't really matter because I already picked it here. Right? And so again, I don't have to use this anymore because again, it's already here. You already referenced here, so it doesn't matter which database you use. But we don't do this because it's just a lot of typing. You do this every time. It's too much work. So just say, hey, just use it, and then use that, and so you can disregard this part here. Okay, but I just show you how it works. And then before this, there's another part called the server. Right, so you have a server that houses this database system or database here. So the server here is, if you scroll up, you will see this server here has a name. Mine is like RAC-HURC-Express, whatever it is. So this whole line here is the server, and you can prepend that here if you want. Or sometimes you can also use, if you find out the IP address, you can put the IP address here, and it will work too. Okay, and so that way you can access other systems, databases from across the network. So you have the network or the server, followed by the database name, the schema, and then the actual table. So you have 4 parts here. And later on we'll learn, like maybe much later in this semester, you'll see that in certain situations, you have to use at least 2 or 3 parts to make it work. Okay. So when I say, it's 3 parts or 4 parts, that's what it means, the schemas here. So for this class for now, we're going to ignore that, and we're going to select that here or use up there. In this case, we just use the drop down and then select that from that table called address in the person. And then, so I comment all my out already, so I don't have to select anything. I just click execute to run it. Click the execute here, or if you want to press F5 for short, the shortcut, it will run that, and then the result of that query will show up below here. You can see that it has every column, every record. It tells you, so you can scroll here, it has a lot of these columns here. On the very bottom, this yellow bar here tells you some information about this query, this result set. And on the right side, the very far right, it tells you the number of rows it returns. So it returns 19,614 rows for my example. Yours probably the same, or more. And if you would scroll down, the numbers on the very left here is the number of rows. This kind of repeated because the address ID is in actually an ID field. It's set to auto increment, right? The identity here. And if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, I should hit 19,614. It's kind of hard to see if I expand that. If you click on it, just expand the column, you'll see that the number of row is 19,614, which is the same as it returns down here. So we don't have to count manually, right? So the result set is shown here. In this example, it's shown in a tabular format, like an Excel sheet, right? So you can just basically view this much nicely. You can resize these columns, just drag between the lines, and then you can resize in the heading here, and resize them to where we want. on the top here, I hope you have it. On the top here, like right around here, you see these three icons here. One is says the result to text. The selected one is the result to the grid. This is the grid here. And then the other one is result to file. So that means when I do a select statement, the returning result set can be printed into the grid format, the text format, or save it to a file as a text file. So if I were to change it to the first one, the text, if I click that and run it again, you see that now it's in text. And because text is kind of useful because I can copy and paste into other code, right? I can select here and just copy and paste basically. So the result set can be changed up here. But for us, it's easier to use the grid, which is nicer. And notice there's no way to close this result set. This result, I cannot X out. And I wonder why, I always wonder why they don't have a little X, you can close it. And once you run it, you're stuck, right? You can't hide it. But fortunately, there's a shortcut for that. And the shortcut is you just basically have to press, you just have to trust me, and press the Control R, I think. The Control R will hide that result set. And it toggles back and forth. So when you write code, if you don't want to see the result set, just press Control R and it will toggle back and forth so you can remove that or you can have your screen back. Okay, so this star means everything from the address. Every record you can find, all rows and all columns. So everything, right? Now if you want, so we just show that there's 19,614 of them. Again, if you just want to see the top 1,000 or top 10, then you put the word top and then followed by the number 10 here. You put it inside a parentheses if you want to, like this. It's an expression. Okay, you don't have to. You can do a 2 times 10, right? It's an expression. That means like 20, right? So select the top 10, meaning from the 19,614, just showing the top 10 rows. And then if you execute that, now you're going to get only 10. Okay, if I expand that, you see there's only 10 here, return. But just make sure you know that that's not the entire column rows. And so likewise, you can put like percent here. And you probably get the same. Yeah, so 10% would be different because we have 19,614. So 10% of that is about 1,906 something, right? So that gives you some flexibility, if you will. So this one here sets the limit here. Now this one here, yeah, so we're not going to use that much unless, like, maybe in the homework assignments, I believe maybe 1 or 2 or some of them, I may ask you just to show the top 15 instead of the entire screen, so just top 10, 15. But that's how you do it. So basically, this is the simple syntax to do that. And so now, as you can see, it returns every column. If I don't want to return all these columns, then you have to change the star to name the actual column you want to return. If I want to get, for example, the ID, I don't need ID. I just get the address 1, city, and the postal code. Then you put that here. In the order you want to return. Not the order in the table itself, the order you want it to be returned. Okay, so it doesn't matter how the order looks. I mean, it doesn't have to match the order inside the table here. This is the actual physical order of your table. And by the way, the order inside your table does not matter. It is not important. Okay? The database order is not important inside the column. I can have all these columns all in different order, doesn't matter, because I have the ability to order them here, right? So it doesn't matter. But when you design it, it's just so easy for us humans to see things in certain order, right? So you see names, last name, first name, and so on. But the order is not important. So if you want to select not everything, but 3 columns, the address line 1. So I'll just list them here. Replace the star with the address line 1. And SQL Server, it is not case sensitive. So there is a way you can set to make it, to force it to be case sensitive, but usually it's not case sensitive by default. So you don't really need to worry about that. And by convention, all your keywords should be in all uppercase. Okay, it's just easy for us to differentiate what is a keyword, what is not. Okay. And your columns and table names are usually using the Pascal case. So you capitalize every word. Okay. So address 1, that is the name, the one down here. Address line 1. Let me just kind of match what I have down there. The next column will be the city, so I'll put a comma. So you separate each field or column with a comma. City, and then the postal code. So I want to select those 3 fields or 3 columns only from the person that address. Okay. And if it's all correct, if these fields are in there, then you should not see the red line. If you see a red squiggly line, that means it knows, it tells you that, hey, there's no such table, a column called address line 12 inside this table. So it's to give you a clue here. If you run it, you're going to get an error. Okay. So if I select the line 10, if I execute, it will say, hey, there's no line 12. Right? So it's really nice to have this IDE here to warn you and give you this heads up. So if I just run, I'm going to get 2 result sets. For example, if I click now, 2 result sets are ran. And if I scroll up a little bit here, you should see 2 tables down here. The first line result, the first select statement is the first one up here. It prints everything. That's like 19,614 or something like that. The second is down here. It's also everything, right? It's also 19,614. If I remember correctly, yeah, it's 14. So this is also everything because we did not set any limit to the number of so 16, 19, 614, 19, 614. If you add them up, so the first one here I selected, it shows that many. The second one I click it shows that many. And if I exit out of that, it will show the result of both of them combined. So if you add 19,614 times 2, you get 39228, right? It shows the result of all the output. And because I select both of them. And sometimes it's nice because you want to compare the actual everything against the one that is more specific to see if they are correct. Okay. And if you know for sure that if this is all I want, then just select that. Again, just highlight that line, execute again, and this time only get the result back. And now you see that it returns only those 3 columns that I want from that entire result set. I still get 19,614 rows. But now it's only those 3 columns. And the first column here is just a counter. It's not part of the table. Right? So far so good? Okay. So now the alias. I'll show you the alias first right away so you can use it. So these fields are the exact same columns inside the table, right? You created, that's the exact name. That's why the result you see here is address line 1, city, and postal code as seen here. If you want to rename them to something else, besides the address 1, I just want to say address. Well, I can't just do that because I do it because there's no address inside this address. So what you can do is you can use an alias. An alias is right next to the column. If you want to change it to something else, you can use a space followed by the word as, and then as what? As address. Okay. If I do that, then it will use this alias name in place of this actual field name. And you can do with a single postcode. Instead of postal code, just use as zip code. I can rename the output. This is not, it's not going to change the underlying table name columns, just an alias of that column here. So if I run it again, you see that now I have renamed my headings to say address instead of address line 1 and zip code instead of postal code. Okay, so just an alias way to kind of rename the result here. Of course, if you export this out, you can always manually change it yourself, but sometimes this is really helpful. And yes, you can. Sometimes you can use certain situations you have to. And sometimes you can also use the square brackets like this too. Okay, and you use that especially when the variable is what, like for example, if it's a 2 words, like as address 1, like that, right? It does not know which one is it. So in this case, you put a quote around it. And in SQL Server, it only takes single quotes. Okay, you cannot use double quotes. It must be a single quote. So now I can use that as a one string. In that, or you can wrap it with a pair of square brackets like this, and that's fine too. Okay. So that's another example. Another example when you use a quote or a square bracket is when we create a table later, is you are using a keyword as part of your column names or a table name. So usually, like computer languages don't let you use keywords in your code as a variable name or a function, and you can't. But SQL Server, it doesn't really care as long as you wrap it with a pair of square brackets or quotes, and even let you use spaces inside your variable names if you put again around quotes or square brackets. Okay, so that's a great question. All right, so as you can see, if I run this, you see that now the address 1 has been renamed to line 1 to address 1. And because it's so common, you don't really have to use the word as either. You can delete that, and SQL Server will know. Okay, it will know that this is the actual field name, and then followed by another word. This must be the alias name. Okay, whether it's a single word or multiple words. If you wrap it with the quotes or square brackets, then that will still be fine as well. Yeah, just try to make you type less. Okay, so now we got that done. Now the next part is for sorting. Okay, so if you look back at the code, I'm going to switch back here really quick. If you look at the syntax here, this is the order of your code here. It must be in that order. It doesn't mean doesn't mean you have to use all of them. You don't have to. But if you do use any one of these keywords, it must be in that order. That means that the order must come before and will come after the from, right? Or come after the having or group or where, right? You cannot put order in front of any one of these other than the for or the option down here. Okay, so in our examples, the order is always usually the last line of code, of our code. And so likewise, the where clause must come after the word from, and then in this order. I cannot switch those around. If you do, it's going to yell at you. Okay, the studio will yell at you. So select something from something. We're going to order by then the column list. Okay, And then these are optional, right? The where clause group by having this optional. You don't have to use them. So back here. So here I'm selecting everything here. Notice I'm doing all this in one line. You don't have to use a single line either. If it's a really short one, you can use a single line. But as it gets more complicated, you can break this into multiple lines. So you see some people will do something like this. You can break it down so that it's just easier to read, it's legible. Okay, you can do something like that. And it would still be fine. It would still work. Because really, spacing is not important to code, right, programs. It's just for us. And again, one more thing, you don't have to put semicolon. You can if you want to. At the end of a statement, you don't have to. But I have a feeling that in the future, they might require it. But for now, all relational database systems do not require a semicolon. It's just so common that from a language standpoint, you just want to use it, but you can. You don't have to either. Okay, so I select, and this is kind of okay, but usually you indent that over here like that because you want to make sure these are belonging to this statement here, right? Just for readability purposes. Again, just for us. The system doesn't care. And then from that, and I want to sort it, so I say order by, and then I choose a column, one of these columns here. Which one should I choose to order by? Let's say order by the city. Put the city here. And then you can sort only by ascending or descending. And the default is always ascending order. So you can type the word ASC, or you can type the whole word. I think it doesn't let you do it, but just ASC for ascending. And if you want to reverse it, just descending, the ESC, and that will sort in reverse order and so on. So let's just say I sorted by descending order. And I have let me turn this off. Okay, so I can go ahead and then save that and then run it. And then now it's in reverse order based on this column called city. Okay, and you can sort by multiple columns. I can sort like city first, and then address, and then zip code, right? Either way, and each column can be sorted based on ascending or descending order. Again, if you don't specify, it'll be ascending by default. Say I want to sort by zip code first, and then by city first, and then by zip code, ascending order, and then by the address one, this one here, descending, right? So you can sort that way. It will sort this first, and then next round will be sorting zip code, and then that, and so on. You get a really interesting result actually if you look at it. So you will see that if you scroll down, yeah, so you have a really interesting result, and it just means you can sort multiple columns. You're not limited to just one. Okay, any questions before we take a break? No? All right, so let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll continue with the other constructs.